Very important story because it's part of sorry there now, I'm just going to ask to unmute. It's part of the building of stories. Stories is not just about telling stories. Stories are living things, and it's absolutely excellent when we co-create stories together. And we won a lovely award called the Bealtaine Hero Award, and a number of us met over 3 Fridays and they flew. We just had a great time. And I see some of the people are here tonight, some of the people like Michelle McCormick. And Anita was there, and there's a few more. I can't see everybody at the moment. And we were able to bring it then to the World Storytelling Cafe. The next phase of a co-created story is when somebody picks it up and begins to tell it, and then the story really begins to get legs and begins to live. And that's happening tonight. Isn't that right, Paddy?
I certainly hope so. It's a very nice build up, and I hope I live up to your introduction, Maria.
I'm sure you will. And
Yeah,
now I'm going to take myself out of your way so that you can
that's
tell
something
me
you
what.
never do, Maria, but under normal circumstances.
Well, this is going to be a first.
Yes, yes, it surely is. There's a small bit of a history to this story. It was co-created as a result of the Bealtaine Award, and it had such an effect on me when Maria co-created it that I was quite moved by it. Now, under normal circumstances, I'm known as a wit and raconteur. Well, in my own head, I am anyway, and I'm normally known for telling humorous stories, or some people would call me a stand-up comedian. But the raconteur is somebody who tells a story skillfully and always with humor. But your children have a way of taking you down, because for Father's Day, I got a card. Can you see that? And the card says, "Dad, when I grow up, I want to be as funny as you think you are. Happy Father's Day."
Brilliant.
So you won't get very far with my children, let me tell you. So this story had a wonderful, it was co-created by about 66 people, and then Maria turned it into a wonderful story about a man called Yeshi. And I was so taken with it that I said, do you know what, I've been thinking about it quite a lot, and I put my own take on it. So this is a story. It's a story of redemption and salvation, if you like, if you want to get kind of philosophical about it. But it's about a very ordinary set of circumstances and an amazing little man and a wonderful woman. So it's a change or a twist on the co-creation that we went about as a result of the Bealtaine Festival. And one of the marvelous things about the Irish oral tradition, which wasn't written, everything was passed down from generation to generation, and each generation put their own twist on every story, myth, and legend, so it always remained current. So this is the story. It's about a man called Yeshi. And Yeshi, as long as people could remember, was always the tea boy in the foundry. No, he wasn't a young man. He was old. He had long, wispy grey hair, and he had wrinkles. But the wrinkles weren't caused by age. They were caused by the continual smiling and laughter that he went on with. And he worked in this factory, and it was a foundry. And if you've ever been in a foundry is a grim, dark, grimy, dangerous place. They made nothing spectacular. They made grates that you put in the ground. They made bits for seats. They made bits of carburetors for cars. They made things that you put into bicycles, and and they were always under pressure to get the numbers. And the cycle was each man had a die casting machine, and beside it there was a vat of molten aluminium, and he would have to put a ladle into the aluminium and pour the aluminium into a cup at the back of the machine, and a piston would ram through with great noise the aluminium into the die. Wait for a minute, reach in with a hot tongs and take the hot casting out and put it in a wire cage. Then it was taken away, and each item was then put into a cooling tank, which had steam and the hissing sound of boiling water, and then you had people running up and down looking for the numbers and looking for the pieces and all that kind of stuff. There were sweaty, grimy, dirty men in overalls, not because they were naturally dirty, but because that was the nature of the game they were in. And Yeshi always had a smile and toured this grim, dark place with the noisy machines and the steam and the molten metal every morning. And he always had a word for everybody. He seemed to have one special word. He didn't have general greetings. He'd have those as well, of course. But then he'd have a special greeting for each individual person at the machine. You never really knew what he said, but it was always acknowledged and understood. And he'd open a window and let air and light and even rain in sometimes. And then the tea. Now, he had a small canteen, just a couple of trestle tables and benches, and a large Burco boiler into which he decanted the tea with some little additions. And he had a large teapots, large two-handled teapots into which he emptied the Burco boiler. And when the lads came in for their break, they sat down generally in the same place. And believe it or not, although the cups were very much the same, he always had the same cup. And he always sang and was always humming. And he loved the songs of the 80s, and his favorite was Boy George of Culture Club. Sure, he's Irish, isn't his name Alan O'Dowd? And his favorite song of that was Karma, 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 Chameleon, red, gold, and green, red, gold, and green. And that was one of the songs he nearly always sang. But while he was singing, pouring out the tea, and he seemed to get the right strength for every person out of the two-handled teapot, and some of the lads would join in the song he was singing at the time. But on Friday was special. On Friday, the other thing that he loved was the fables of Tiernan and Og, which he rarely got to talk about. But on Friday was different. On a Friday, he dressed up as Boy George and came into work with long flowing robes and the big tall hat, and the robes consisted of green and gold, and they had a sing-song in the canteen at lunchtime. And he had a light tenor voice, and everybody looked forward to that 15 minutes or so out in that grimy place of song. And over a period of time, you know what? There was a lovely baritone kind of choir noise developed among the lads as they found their vocal identity among the workers. That was the way things went. And they looked forward to the weekend after their vocalization, usually to Boy George, Yeshi in his outfit and his tall hat for the weekend. And one day the radio was always on, but one day word came on the radio in where they announced the deaths on provincial radio in Ireland. They always announced the deaths. And word came through that Nora Burke had died. And they were just about to go for the tea. And Yeshi came out, and the tears were running down his face. He said, I loved her. No, their love was never physical. I loved her because she had a lovely little cottage, and if you walked up the path to her half door, you would walk past the lavender, the roses, the hyacinths, the posies, the herbs. And she knew how to mix the herbs when they matured, so she could make up potions for people that could cure them of various ailments. And she loved children because they came to her, and she would tell them stories of Tiernan and Og. And she also always had gobstoppers, and she had Peggy's legs and lollipops and other little sweet things that children wouldn't get from their parents. But Nora always had them. And so, yes, she was heartbroken because he'd heard this news on the radio. And he said, I only passed the house this morning and I saw the fairy people in the house through the half door, in the house with her. And they were in a circle around her and they were singing. And he perked up. And he said, she's not dead at all. She's gone to Tiernan and Og, the land of abundance, the land of beauty, the land of happiness and health. And he looked at the lads and he said, lads, we have to go down to the cottage. And 29 men, for the first time ever, walked out of the factory, the foundry, down to the cottage and into the house. And you'd say, how could 29 men fit in that little cottage? We'll never know. But they all went in there and they never came back. And sometimes, if you pass that little cottage on a summer's evening before the red sun sinks and its golden rays are still caressing the lawns, the greens, and the colours of the flowers in Nora's garden, you may hear a light breeze, but it's not a light breeze. If you listen closely, you'll hear the refrain, "Karma, karma, 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 chameleon," led by a light tenor voice and 29 soft baritone voices. They must be in Tir na Nog. And that's my story.
Oh, Paddy, I'm such a proud trainer, although trainer isn't the right word, co-creator. I loved that. My mother had these sayings long ago about the trimmings on the rosary. You know, she said everybody added their own little bit of spice to it. And it feels like that with this story, that you added a little bit of spice. I loved the fact that, yes, she dressed up as Boy George of a Friday, you know, and the 29 men, you know, that kind of lived in my imagination as well. So thank you so much for taking our co-created story and bringing it on. And to all of the others now that were with us, if you feel like taking one of the stories on, we'd love that too. Paddy, mwah, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Really
Maria. Thank you very much.
delighted with that. Delighted with that. And if you